Welcome to Data Unboring. A/B testing seems simple, but it's actually incredibly easy to get things wrong. So today we're going to discuss the top 3 common pitfalls to avoid during A/B tests. A woman storms out of her boyfriend's apartment, very angrily. The guy chases after her. "Oh, honey, I wasn't really cheating on you. It was more like an A/B test." Ethical opinions aside, and speaking purely from an A/B test standpoint, the moral of the story is, if you're going to A/B test your girlfriend versus another woman, then you better not let them know about each other. This leads us to rule number 1 of A/B testing don't do's. Don't let your test and control groups know about each other. On a related note, in the movie Dallas Buyers Club, Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto's characters both contracted HIV when the pandemic first started in the 80s.
You've tested positive for HIV.
At the time, there were no proven treatments for the virus, except some experimental drugs that needed to go through human trials.
For about a year, a group of patients gets either the drug or placebo. It's totally left up to chance. Not even doctors are allowed to know.
So you can die in people's sugar pills?
Even though no one really knew what group they were assigned to, these people did attend the same support group, so they knew of each other.
There is a support group that meets daily in Andrade Auditorium.
Driven by survival instincts, what these people very smartly did was they got together, pitched in their pills, mixed them up, and got their portions back. So essentially now, half of everyone's dosage consisted of the experimental drug, and the other half the placebo pill. Moralities all aside, this A/B test has just been completely ruined. The control and test groups completely contaminated each other because rule number 1 we just discussed was violated, which was don't let your test and control groups know about each other. Now let's take a look at some everyday life examples. We've all been through airport security checks. Sometimes if everything scans through and checks out, there's still a chance you could get randomly selected to go through additional questionings for testing purposes. I was randomly selected this one time. So standing in line, the guy in front of me passed through, the guy behind me passed through, but I was randomly chosen. So me, being the test group, obviously knew about the control group, the guy in front of me and the guy behind me. And I was really upset at getting the short end of the stick. However, since TSA is a government agency, there really wasn't anything I could do about the situation. But what if you're not a government agency? For example, if Safeway wants to A/B test 30% off coupons upon checkout, and they want to do a 50-50 test with people waiting in line. Imagine if I was in line and the guy in front of me gets a 30% off, the guy behind me gets a 30% off, and I don't get anything, then there would be mutiny. So the point is, your A/B test could really have an impact on user experiences. Whether it's a life or death situation, like in Dallas Buyers Club, or you're just Safeway giving out discounts. So really think it through. Could your test and control groups find out about each other? If they could, would anyone get upset about anything? Moving on to rule number 2, we'll first look at an example. A company did an A/B test on a marketing email. They started off with 200 customers who were randomly split into 50-50 test and control groups. 100 of the customers went into the test group to receive the email, and the other 100 was saved for the control group to not get any email at all. Within the test group, 94 of the customers received the email successfully, and 6 customers had the email bounce. So now the question is, Which group should we be comparing for analysis? Is it this original 100 versus 100? Or should we compare the 94 who got the email versus the entire control group of 100? Now pause for a minute and think about the situation. Continue on when you're ready. Ooh, I know. This should definitely be 94 versus 100 because only 94 of them actually got the email. Okay, so for these 6 customers, how do you think they might be different from the other 94? Well, if their email bounced, that probably means they haven't been using that email address at all. So their account with the e-commerce store with that email address is probably an older or at least a not very active one. All right. So knowing that these 6 customers may not have been as active as the other 94, should we still eliminate them from the analysis? I guess not, because these 6 customers are kind of worse than the other 94. So if we take them out, it wouldn't be fair for the control group. That's completely correct. If we were to remove these 6 bad customers from the test group, then we're effectively adding a selection bias to the test group. A selection bias that positively benefits the test group because their worst customers has just been removed. So that leads us to rule number 2. Don't put a filter on one group and not the other. In our case, that filter would have been whether an email bounced or not. If we were to put such a filter on the test group, then we'd have to put it on the control group as well. The ideal situation would be, without actually sending any email to these 100 yellow control group customers, if there's a way for us to actually know how many of these 100 yellow customers would have gotten their emails successfully and how many would have had a bounce, in that case, we could just compare the 94 versus however many will be in this blue box. However, in reality, there's no way to know which emails would bounce without actually sending the email. So instead, we compare the original test group of 100 customers versus the original control group of 100 customers. Before looking at rule number 3, we'll look at another case study. A company wants to A/B test on customers who are 25 years old or older. So they start off with a total of 1,000 customers, of which 800 were 25 or older, and 200 were younger than 25. They wanted to set the test group to be this 800 and the control group to be this 200. Now pause for a minute and think about the situation. Continue on when you're ready. So there's a huge problem with this A/B test. By comparing those who are 25 or older versus those who are younger, you are effectively introducing a huge selection bias into this test. The correct way to go about this is to get your 1,000 customers, filter out the 800 who are old enough, then randomly split the 800 into test and control groups, leaving the 200 younger customers entirely out of this test. Which brings us to rule number 3. Don't use unqualified customers for your control group. So there you go. These are your top 3 don't do's for A/B tests. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned for more videos.